What's up? We are here. Who the heck knows where Le'Veon Bell is? So we're going to update you on that status, when he could possibly show up in Pittsburgh, and what you should do if you're one of the poor souls who drafted him.
Plus, we'll get you set for Thursday night's $1 Million Showdown. $1 million.
Yes.
Plus, we're sprinkling in some tears of joy with the golf guys.
Oh, and who you should be chasing, who you should be fading on the diamond, that's baseball.
Without further ado, feast your eyes on the sweat.
Alrighty, we're sweaty, you're sweaty, let's all be sweaty together. How about that? Thanks for watching The Sweat. She's Jessie, I am Emerson, and we promise to make it weird for the next 60 minutes.
You make it weird always.
As always, young lady. And as you just heard, Le'Veon Bell remains a no-show. Our NFL peeps are here with the fantasy impact that this will have.
We'll also do our best to help you make some money, starting in baseball. So hello to our analysts who you can catch on the DK Live app, Julian, Steve, and Garion.
Looking good, guys. And looking at the lineups for this evening, no Trout, no Machado, no Yelich, no Correa. So real quick, all three of you, how will you attack this starless 12-game slate? Steve?
Yeah, I mean, really for the most part, I think the only one this really affects is how much of a better matchup this is for Wheeler. You know, we'll get into that in just a second. But, you know, Correa being out really doesn't move the needle for me for Odorizzi. I'm not too high on the Angels-Texas game. And then, so I think really Wheeler is the one that you really have to look forward to. He was iffy for me to begin with. I think he's more of a lock now.
Gary and big names are out. What changes for you?
Yeah, I think like Steve said, Machado not being in that lineup does impact my willingness to maybe get more of a sprinkle of Wheeler into some of my lineups. And maybe even the fact that Trout's not playing and I don't have to spend $5,900 like I was going to a lot, that might actually benefit my roster construction habits tonight. So there's still some big names. Rizzo's still playing, Carpenter's still playing, Story's in there. Like there's enough big high-value bats to go around.
Julian, does this benefit your roster habits?
Yeah, I mean, it changed a lot of things for me. I think Mike Trout was a guy that a lot of us were trying to find a way to jam into cash lineups, especially considering how he's crushed Bartolo Colon over his career. So a lot of high-priced bats. Yelich has been really hot. I do think that it does simplify things when you get a lot of expensive bats out on a big slate like this. It kind of helps the obvious plays become a little more obvious in other spots. But Trout was a big changer for me, I think, in this slate.
All right, guys, time for some chase or fade. So we heard his name a couple minutes ago, but the big choice tonight is picking between Severino and Wheeler for the best pitching option. So what are you doing here, Steve?
Yeah, this originally was going to be a fade for me, but now I'm going to chase this one with the news on the Dodgers lineup. I mean, I'm still not on board with Severino at all. I mean, despite him scoring over 20 DK fantasy points over his last 3 starts, when was the last time that this guy has reached value? Now he has to go face the Oakland Athletics. No thanks. I am absolutely not in on him. He's just way too expensive for the lackadaisical outputs that he's had as of late. And then, like I said earlier, I wasn't too high on Wheeler, but now that Machado's out of the lineup, Kemp's out of the lineup, Wheeler's got to be in play now here. I mean, when was the last time he didn't reach value? That's something he's consistently done over the past 2 months at this point. Even though the Dodgers have been one of the best hitting clubs over the past 2 weeks, those two guys out of the lineup makes a big difference.
Gary, and like Steve said, a lot of those big stars not in the lineup tonight. So does this change it for you, or are you going to chase this now?
No, I'm still going to fade it. I, again, will admit that Wheeler is now on my radar, but I would still say you can only play the teams on the schedule, but Wheeler's been blessed with one of the easiest schedules over his past 8, 9, 10 starts. He's pitched exceedingly well, so you can't knock the guy in any facet, but I still think this diminished Dodgers lineup is the best lineup he's had to face in probably at least a month. So I think I'm far more drawn to that next tier down at starting pitcher, the tier that includes Tyler Glasnow, the tier that includes Michael Kopech, the tier that includes Ryu. I just think that's kind of where I want to be spending most of my money on my SP1.
So, Julian, there's a lot of expensive batters on here. So in this situation, when you're looking at these pitchers, are you willing to pay up for one of these two guys?
Yeah, I'm with Gary in here, and I'm fading. When you look at their game logs, I can see why you would want to chase. Obviously, Wheeler is on a really nice stretch. Severino struggled for a while, but has bounced back and put together some good starts. But that's just the game log. Steve was completely off Severino, as was Gary, and I agree with those guys. You don't need to pay all the way up for him against Oakland. But some people are going to start to try and pay up for Wheeler here, given the Dodgers lineup, like the guys talked about. And I still don't think you need to reach that far and pay that much salary for pitching on this slate. As they mentioned, Ryu at 9,200 is an option. Glasnow at 9,500 is an option. Nick Pivetta at 8,200 in Miami for the Phillies is a really good option. I think there are a lot of places that you can pay down for pitching and get equal production here. So I still, even given this Dodgers lineup, have no interest in Wheeler and no interest in Severino to begin with.
Got to save up for the big bats. Yeah, I get it.
By the way, Julian looking very nice with the professional lighting today.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, this is a lot different than my living room, guys.
Yes, we know. And all those magnets covering your fridge. We're well aware. Red second baseman Scooter Gennett averaging north of 15 fantasy points over his last 5 games. He's in for another big outing tonight against Pittsburgh. Chase or fade, Garion?
I'm going to fade this one. I don't know. I just don't necessarily like this spot. I know Gennett's been great the past 5 days. I also know those 5 games have been on the road, so you can't even really make a he's not playing at Great American argument, because actually if you dive into the splits, he's been better on the road this season than he has been at home. And even Tyon splits would suggest that a left-handed batter like Scooter would benefit. I mean, his WOBA is 76 points higher against left-handed batters than it is against right-handed batters. His strikeout rate is lower, his ground ball rate is lower, but I just look at this spot and I think at that price point at second base, I'm just more willing to pay for even the second baseman on the other side of this game log. I think I'd rather have Frazier. I'd rather have Joey Wendell against Aaron Sanchez. I just don't feel like I'm going to have any exposure to Gennett tonight. And maybe that doesn't mean he's not going to have a good game, but he's just not someone I'm paying for tonight.
Julian, yeah, he's moving it. That's a pretty hot take there. Julian, can you make the sweatometer go even higher here? Are you going to have a lot of exposure with this guy?
No.
Okay, sounds
Look,
good.
I'll chase that Scooter Gennett will have a good game here. I just don't know that I want to pay $4,600 for him given the other second base options. We know the BVP, of course, against Jameson Taillon. Let's see here. He's got a home run off him, a few doubles. He hits very well against him. But there are so many better places here. We've got the game at Coors. We've got DJ LeMahieu. We've got Joe Panik leading off at a very low salary for the Giants in an opposite hand matchup. Rougned Odor is going to be a really popular option. So I actually do think Gennett will have a good game here. He's just kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th when it comes to second baseman options for me on this slate. So I don't think I'm going to have much, if any, exposure to him when it comes down to it.
Steven, he lit it up for 28 points last night. You like Gennett, or you like what these other guys are saying, and you're going to go with another second baseman?
I mean, I don't think 4,600 is crazy to ask for someone who's hitting as well as he is lately. And like Garion said, I mean, the splits for Tyon are not that great against lefties. 333 WOBA, 4.31 FIP, 33% hard hit rate. I mean, sure, he doesn't give up a ton of home runs, but Gennett's batting cleanup in this lineup. I don't think it's a crazy amount to ask for in someone who's really in a good spot overall. I mean, Julian was saying all these guys he'd rather have. I think that makes me want to go on Gennett even more. Because if that's the mentality that people are going to have for tonight, I will absolutely take the hot hand with Gennett here.
All right, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. We had to cut this one short. We've got Garion's 3 biggest fades of the night coming out, plus Reed and Jeff are here for some PGA Tears of Joy.
But until then, here's a BMW Championship course preview with the one and only Reed Fowler.
How's it, golf fans? Reed Fowler in the DK Live Studios. Hope everyone had a great holiday weekend. But moving on to the Bryson DeChambeau Show, or better known as the FedEx Cup Playoffs, we are off to the 3rd stop, which takes us to Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, at Aronimink Golf Club. Aronimink was built back in the early 1900s by famed Donald Ross and recently renovated by Gil Hans in 2016, another Ross-Hans course design in the playoffs. The BMW Championship was previously hosted at Conway Farms, Cog Hill, and Cherry Hills, but it'll be the first time the tournament will be hosted at Aronimink and the first time the course has hosted a PGA tournament since the AT&T National in 2010 and 11. The field will consist of the top 70 in the FedEx Cup standings and include past winners like Dustin Johnson, Billy Horschel, Jason Day, and defending champion Mark Leishman. Molinari should be back, and Ricky Fowler will join the rest of the field for the first time in hopes to better his position at 30th in the standings. Justin Rose, the runner-up last week, will also be teeing it up in Pennsylvania for the first time since his victory back in 2010. The BMW and the Tour Championship will be no-cut events, similar to what we see at WGCs. Winning scores here have been in the low double digits, and both cut lines back in 2010 and 11 have been around +4. The course will look and play a little different than what some of the guys experienced. Hans called it a restoration and not so much a renovation by taking the original blueprints from Ross and recreating the famed course back to somewhat of its original layout. As with all Ross designs, a well-placed tee shot will yield an advantageous approach. Hans increased the width of the fairways in order for the players to have opportunities to make decisions on their next shot. It's not only the tee shot that the guys will have to hit well. This course will test every facet of your game from tee to green with undulations, big greens, and well-placed hazards. One of the key restoration projects was the addition of 100+ bunkers by keeping the style of the original bunkering intact. Another Ross Hans design, some of the key stats I'm focusing on are strokes gained approach, par 4 scoring between 400 to 450 yards with 7 par 4s playing within this range, as well as sand saves, and one of my favorite plays this week is Francesco Molinari at 8,800. Over the last 24 rounds, Molinari is just outside the top 30 in sand saves, 10th in par 4 scoring from 400 to 450 yards, and 3rd in strokes gained tee to green.
All right, guys, the NFL season arrives in just over 24 hours. We've got the Falcons and Eagles clashing on Thursday night. We're getting you prepped with our experts, Rich Rebar of Roto World. We got DK Live and TSN contributor Andy McNamara will be joining us as well, and Rosalie Michaels, a.k.a. Fantasy Girl.
You guys are going to help us understand the fantasy implications of the latest NFL news. So let's start with the drama in Pittsburgh. We've got reports of an extended holdout for Le'Veon Bell. So this is a two-part question for you, Rich. First, how many people who have already had their fantasy draft are crying right now? And secondly, for week 1, what does this mean for the RB pool and the Steelers offense?
Well, everyone should be crying, but hopefully everyone at least at the end of their draft tagged on, James Conner with that last pick instead of taking a kicker and haven't picked up their kicker yet. But yeah, it's going to have big implications this week on the running back pool. I mean, you look at Le'Veon Bell, he's missed 18 games over his career. Over that span, Pittsburgh lead backs have averaged 20.5 touches per game, 96.8 yards from scrimmage, and 18.2 PPR points per game. A lot of that sample is D'Angelo Williams. We're talking a 32, 33-year-old D'Angelo Williams, not a 23-year-old running back that looked as spry as James Conner did this preseason. And in that week 3 preseason game, he had all the running back rushing attempts with Roethlisberger's in the game and caught 3 of 3 targets for 29 yards. I mean, he's going to be a guy that's going to walk into a high snap count and a high touch floor immediately in week 1.
Rosalie, Bell's holdout, what does it mean for the RB pool?
Yeah, it's funny. You say how many people are crying? All of them. All of them are crying right now. Yeah, except for the ones that, like he said, were smart enough to pick up James Conner before, this kind of came into existence. I think most of us expected for Bell to be back for week 1, just like last year. But when we look at what Bell did, I actually think that Connor's a better start this week versus Cleveland than if Bell were back. His preseason numbers show he's ready to rock and put up some big numbers against Cleveland, as opposed to Bell, who last year in that first home opener with Cleveland again, only had 32 yards on 10 carries. So, if you were smart enough to pick up James Conner either as your backup to Bell, knowing that this was going to happen, or in the case of some of my leagues, I went in and snagged him and got a little bonus running back this week. So I'm pretty excited.
Rosalie freezing on us.
Ooh,
we're
gonna have to pass on that one.
Yeah, cutting in and out, Rosalie. So we're going to go to Andy on this one. Andy, running back pool. We don't know when Bell's going to be back. What does this mean?
Well, I like, for this week, keeping to the same game, Carlos Hyde. I think Carlos Hyde, he's proven in the preseason that he's a better pass catcher when given the opportunity than we thought when he was in San Francisco. He outplayed rookie Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson. So to just stay within that same Browns-Steelers game, I think you can get some nice value out of Carlos Hyde. And if you're looking for another Pittsburgh option, how about Vance McDonald? If that foot is right, the Browns were one of the worst defending teams against tight ends last season. And this year, although the whole team overall is improved, they're still not very good against tight ends. So Vance McDonald might be a nice little pickup if that foot injury is better.
Well, Andy, how about safety Earl Thomas? He said on Twitter this morning he's going to return to the Seahawks following his lengthy holdout that cost him about $1.6 million in fines. Does this do anything, in your mind to raise the fantasy value of Seattle's defense and special teams here?
No, not in week 1 especially. It was reported also on ESPN, like he might not, they don't know what football condition he's in. Is he going to be ready to play? Is he going to be on a snap count? Listen, guys, any starting defense that starts Arkevious Mingo as a linebacker, I'm not buying it, okay? You got Bobby Wagner, who's still a good player, KJ Wright, but that whole Seattle defense, we have to wrap our heads around. The Legion of Boom is dead. It's gone. It's not the same defense, and I think we're seeing maybe the Seattle D being drafted a little bit higher than it should be based on memory, based on name recognition. So whether Thomas is back week 1 or not, it doesn't move the needle too much for me.
How much does it move the needle for you, Rosalie?
I agree. Not at all either. They're ranked about 15th. I still think that's high. We have to remember, I'm gonna use the words of Bobby Wagner where he says, "Where's everybody at?" He gets into the huddle, and this is a whole different team that he's not used to seeing. We've got the Griffin brothers, who are a little exciting, but 7 other new starters on that defense. And then they've got Ken Norton as the defensive coordinator now, who was with Oakland the past 3 years, and we saw how their defense was. And I like Ken Norton. I'm a Cowboys fan growing up, so I like Ken Norton. But yeah, I think he's right. They're going based on what their reputation has been and not what they currently are. So except for maybe a weekly flyer, I'm not touching them.
Rich, Earl Thomas is back. What's that do for you in your eyes when you look at the Seattle defense?
I mean, nothing. They weren't a defense I was targeting to begin with. I mean, I'm more looking at teams playing Seattle now because you can get some of those guys now a little cheaper, especially in the DFS front, with lower ownership for the stigma that the general population obviously still holds Seattle's defense in regard. I mean, no Michael Bennett, no Cam Chancellor, no Cliff Averill, no Sheldon Richardson, possibly no Earl Thomas even for this week. This is the team going on the road to Denver that has a trio of wide receivers that are capable of playing well against any secondary. Now they've got a capable quarterback in Case Keenum, and you've got a rookie in Royce Freeman now who's elevated to be starting status. So, I mean, those are all options there that are going to be lower owned in the DFS front because they're playing the Seattle Seahawks, and people don't want to click on the button because they still hold the red, ranking versus every position from last year.
All right, finally, guys, Giants TE Evan Ingram is out of concussion protocol, and he's on target to play in week 1. So, Rich, do you like him as a TE option this week versus the Jaguars?
I mean, like is probably strong. Like we'll live with because of the position. It's probably more like it. I mean, the Giants just have a 20-point team total, one of the lowest of the week. The Jaguars don't give up really many fantasy points at all. They were 21st in percentage of points allowed to tight ends. If anyone's going to score points in the passing game, it's probably going to be Barkley out of the backfield, a little bit of Ingram and Sterling Shepard in the slot now that Aaron Colvin is no longer on the roster. Live with is about just where we are, though. We can't expect a big ceiling game against the Jaguars defense.
Yeah, Andy, you got to think that a lot of that defense is going to be focused on Odell and Saquon. So do you think that Ingram could get some one-on-ones, basically, because everybody else is focused on the big names?
It's still a great defense.
Right, and that's a great point. Having Ingram back, I think, benefits the Giants offense as a whole because, as you said, you got to account for Barkley, Beckham, and now Ingram also, and Sterling Shepard on the other side too. So he might get some one-on-ones, and I'm with Rich. As far as can you live with it because of the position, sure. Would you rather go somewhere else week 1? Yeah, because the Jags gave up the fewest passing yards all year and 10th fewest in fantasy, the tight ends last season. So when you're looking at what the Giants can do, I think there's a little bit of potential. But I'd rather, if I'm going week 1 and playing DraftKings this week, I'd probably rather go a cheaper option like a David Njoku, perhaps maybe even a Tyler Eifert since he's back in health.
Rosalie, what about you? Do you think he's a good TE option against the Jags?
Yeah, I think we all agree that against the Jags, it's a hard call. But really, where else are you going to go? My favorite tight ends this week are Jack Doyle, Delaney Walker, and Trey Burton. Those are going to be great plays this week. But, those guys are all going to be taken. So maybe if you're looking for somebody that's not taken, maybe you could go with OJ Howard and he'll.
Come on, you got it in you.
Okay.
No,
I don't think it's worth the risk.
well, your internet doesn't appear to be
That
cooperating
internet.
here, young lady.
We hate that internet.
So-
we'll have you fix that in
Yeah,
the meantime.
we're going to need you to fix that because we are going to have you guys all back.
Yeah. Well, that's all for you, Andy, but we are going to talk to Rosalie and Rich again in just a couple minutes. In the meantime, here's Adam Levitan and his DFS Edge solo podcast giving you his Week 1 keys and biggest Week 1 questions.
So what does this all mean? You know, first it means you're going to need a ton of points to win money on DraftKings in Week 1. Lots of them. Like a guy who is 3,700 with a median projection of 8 points isn't nearly as valuable as it is normally because this week we have so many guys who just smash that in upside. It also means I think that the ownership will get really concentrated on some of these guys that I mentioned since they're clearly such strong plays. And finally, it means we're going to have some big decisions, right? Because we can't roster everyone. Normally in a week, you know, we'll get to week 6 or week 7 and it'll just be obvious. Like you have a guy in a spot like Rex Burkhead, like Royce Freeman or whatever. And he's just an absolute must play. But we have so many good ones here and we can't roster all of them, obviously, and fill out our cap. So it's going to be tough. We're going to have to parse between a bunch of really good plays when a lot of them project really quite similarly. I wanted to go through just quickly a few of the biggest questions I see on the slate, and I'm sure there's tons more. These are just off the top of my head. There's tons more questions for this slate, which we'll go through on Thursday with Al and Pete on the game-by-game breakdown. But I think one of the biggest, if not the biggest questions on the slate is Keelan Cole. He's 3,800. Mentioned the Marquise Lee injury. Everyone seems to be on Keelan Cole, and I like Keelan Cole a lot for sure. Think he can really play. My questions are we really sure that his target share will be higher than Dante Moncrief and Dede Westbrook? They also have Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who obviously has a really good matchup against the Giants. TJ Yeldon will be involved in the pass game. Leonard Fournette was involved way more in the pass game in the preseason than he was last year. And also the Jags ideally don't want to throw very much. So I think you can poke some holes in Keelan Cole. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely super strong. But I think you can poke some holes in him. The decision whether to use him or not is a big one. Another big question for me on this slate is the Ravens defense versus a zillion other defenses that I think are viable. You know, defensive scoring is so highly variable. One special teams touchdown or one scoop and score just changes everything. And that's why paying up at the position is something I really rarely do. But now we're in a spot where the Ravens are home against this putrid Buffalo team, and they're going to be massively owned. And not only will they be massively owned for a defense and really massively owned overall, they're also the most expensive defense. So it's really tough for me, particularly in tournaments, to want to be on a defense that's the most expensive and the most owned. That said, it's a scary fade for sure. Nathan Peterman and this offense is for sure likely to struggle. Kelvin Benjamin will be the wide receiver 1. Zay Jones will be the wide receiver 2. Jeremy Curley will be the wide receiver 3. Charles Clay is the tight end. This offensive line projects as a bottom 5 unit in the entire NFL. They're on the road. And look, I'm not going to say based on that one Chargers game last year that Nathan Peterman is the worst quarterback in the history of the world and he's going to turn it over 5 times again. He actually, I thought, looked somewhat competent in the preseason. We're pretty competent in the preseason, but any quarterback going into this spot with those weapons, with that offensive line, is going to struggle. So I think it's a big question to decide whether you want to use the Ravens defense or not, knowing they're the most expensive and likely or almost certain to be the most highest owned. Then the other question for me is Jordan Reed. You know, when the salaries first came out, I thought Jordan Reed was just a stone lock. There's been continued whispers that maybe he's not fully healthy. He says he is. The coaches say he is, but didn't participate in any preseason games. Would have loved to get a look at him in the preseason, but you know, he's 4K and Jack Doyle is 3,600 as Andrew Luck's average depth of target in the preseason was really low. Jack Doyle, I think, makes more and more sense. And then we also have this spot for Rob Gronkowski at tight end where the target share in New England is so condensed. I mean, they literally have 3, or after cuts had 3 wide receivers on their roster. So I think Gronk is for sure going to be featured. We saw the incentives they put into his contract They know how important he is. So anyways, we'll see on all this stuff. Going to talk about it as we do the game-by-game breakdown on Thursday with Al and Pete.
All right, baseball's back, which marks the return of Julian the Jewel Edlow, Mean Steve Buchanan, and Gary and Hate Me Because He Ain't Me Thorn. Speaking of hate, it's time for Thorn in My Side.
So Gary, and you're going to give us your 3 biggest fades of the night. These are guys you absolutely despise, and Steve and Julian are going to give you some pushback. So your first Thorn, please.
Let's go with Nolan Arenado. We didn't get a chance to talk about this Rockies-Giants game in the first segment, but here's the thing with Arenado. There's a reason he's $5,200 tonight and not $6,000 like he would normally be in a home game against a left-handed pitcher, a smash spot in a vacuum for Nolan Arenado. We're talking about someone with a .933 slugging percentage under those conditions so far this season. He's hurt. He's so clearly hurt that you cannot put this guy in your lineup. You go back to August 11th, the day after he injured his shoulder. He has a 128 isolated power and 72 WRC plus. If you just isolate his at-bats against left-handed pitchers in that span, his ISO is under 100 and he's got just a 40 WRC plus. He can't elevate the ball, just a 27% fly ball rate. He is so clearly hurt. I can't have this guy in my lineup tonight.
Steve, $5,200 is a lot of money to pay for a guy who is so clearly hurt. What do you think?
So clearly hurt, but they don't want to put him on the disabled list. So how hurt is he? Is he really that hurt, Garion? I mean, I'm no doctor, but they still roll him out there every night. I mean, look, this is a hard one for me to pass. I mean, can you say that Arenado has slowed down in the second half? Absolutely. But still against lefties in that span, he still has a .474 WOBA with a .438 isolated power with 4 of his 8 home runs since the All-Star break.
All that's crazy. Before August 11th, man. It's all before August 11th.
I'm sorry, is this my time to speak or yours?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Nice job, Dad.
Even if he's still deemed expensive at $5,200, it's not a terrible price for someone that continues to smash lefties. I mean, this is still someone that has done it at home so much. I mean, I don't know. Sure, is he hurt? Absolutely. He absolutely could be, but he's still going out there. He still has the power. I think he can still do it.
All right, so Julian, it wasn't Garion's turn to talk, but he did point out that those numbers were from before August 11th. So what do you think? Is he hurt? Would you want to roster this guy for $5,200?
I mean, who knows if he's hurt? If he is, rub a little dirt on it and get out there, because as Garion said, he should be $6,000 in this situation, and he's $5,200. We are getting a huge savings on Arenado, batting third in an opposite-hand matchup at Coors Field. And as we mentioned, we did not get a chance to talk about this on the Chase Fade at the top of the show. I am chasing the hell out of Coors Field tonight. Everybody is way too cheap, and the pitching is way worse than we saw last night when we were all talking about fading Coors Field. Heading into this slate, it was almost like Mike Trout or Nolan Arenado. Which one of these guys are you going to pay up for? And like we talked about on the top, Mike Trout is out of the lineup, so this decision was made for me. Give me Arenado in GPPs. Give him to me in cash games. I want all the Nolan Arenado. He hits .388 against lefties this year. I don't care what it is since August 11th because he'll be fine tonight. He homers at nearly twice a rate against left-handed pitching as he does against right-handed pitching, and his batting average is nearly 100 points higher at home. Don't care. Give me Nolan Arenado.
Don't care, Claire. All right, Garion, let's see if your second thorn stirs up as much controversy as the first one.
Yep.
Well, it's funny because Nolan Arenado is not the only guy who's obviously hurt playing in this game tonight. The Giants have been a little more forthcoming with Brandon Belt, who is going to need surgery on his knee by season's end. And yet, still a team with nothing to play for some reason, is now sticking Belt in these lineups consistently. And I don't get it, because since June 28th, the dude has 1 home run in over 150 plate appearances. He's hitting below the Mendoza line in that time, and his isolated power is just .070. That makes Billy Hamilton look like Babe Ruth. Brandon Belt can't hit because both his knees are destroyed right now. He should be on the DL. We shouldn't see Brandon Belt the rest of this season. And also, Antonio Senzatella, somebody who I have in a lot of lineups tonight because the Giants in general suck at offense, he's been pretty good against left-handed bats. Of the 104 he's faced this season, he's only allowed 1 home run. So Brandon Belt will not be any of my lineups. I would rather pay for Matt Carpenter. I would rather find the money for Anthony Rizzo.
Steve, another guy obviously hurt. Are they still wheeling him out? What's your take on Belt?
Hey, Gary, can you move over for a second? I'm just looking for your certificate in medicine. I can't see it. Okay. Anyways, look, Brandon Belt, 4,700 tonight. I mean, it's hard to be excited about anybody on the Giants to begin with. This is a team that owns a 126 isolated power over the last 2 weeks. I think this is pretty easy to fade, especially for a guy who has 7 extra base hits since July 1st. Think about that. Are you really going to pay nearly $5,000 for someone who hits an extra base hit, maybe once every 2 weeks? Thanks for the tip, Gary, and I was really on Belt tonight.
Wow. Another injury. Julian, what are you doing with this one?
Well, unless Garion knows that Brandon Belt is having knee surgery tonight, then I don't care about this injury that Garion has dug up once again. We need to get a new just medical segment for Garion where he tells us about all these injuries that none of the rest of us know about, because Brandon Belt is a fantastic play here in an opposite hand matchup, batting cleanup, 4,700, a little more than I want to pay. So yes, I'll give it to Garion in GPPs. Maybe I don't have as much interest in Belt, but in cash games, this is a staple right here. The matchup is ideal, and I knew Garion was going to throw the reverse splits out there for Antonio Senzalita, and that he's been good, or however you pronounce his name, he's been good against left-handed bats. I trust the talent in Brandon Belt more in this matchup. He has hit 12 of his 14 home runs off of opposite hand pitching in that matchup that he has tonight. As I mentioned, this is a bounce-back night for Coors Field. People are going to be a little less likely to target it after what we saw last night, but it is just a far different pitching matchup, and I will be glad to take all these guys that Garion is fading because they suck or because they're secretly injured or whatever the case may be.
He's overtly injured.
Wow. Sweatometer going
Wow,
off.
that is a new personal best for you on the Sweatometer, Julian. I knew you had it in you, kid.
Overtly, covertly, whatever way we want to call these injuries. Is your third Thorn also injured?
No, fortunately, G-Man Choi is healthy. To the best of my knowledge, he's coming out tonight, DHing for the Rays, not because he's hurt in any way, just because he's kind of slow and a bigger guy. But that's one of the reasons that I'm kind of fading him tonight. I don't think you're fading the Rays against Aaron Sanchez. Sanchez has had too many issues with left-handed bats. The Rays can put too many left-handed bats into their lineup. The WOBA at Rogers Center is up above 400. The problem is, and we talk about this sometimes, it's a bit of an empty WOBA. 16.8 walk rate to left-handed bats at Rogers Center, only 0.74 home runs per 9. Not a lot of extra base hits. It's a lot of walks and singles. That's fine, but I think someone like Choi, of his archetype, that's not what I want to attack tonight. I want to get Wendell in my lineup. I want to get Malik Smith in my lineup. I want to get Kevin Kiermaier in my lineup because I know if Aaron Sanchez walks one of those gentlemen, it's not just 2 points. They could definitely steal second base against a rookie catcher and against a pitcher whose windup is incredibly deliberate. So those are the kind of bats I'm attacking with the Rays tonight. Choi will not be part of my Rays stack.
Steve, he's not injured. What's your take?
I mean, I'll be honest. I think I've rostered Choi maybe once in my entire life, so I can't say I was really agonizing over this decision. But I was surprised. He does have some decent power through 45 games so far. But I also have to take into the fact that I think Garion just doesn't play bats against the Blue Jays because of his allegiance to his home team. He always have to take out the brand assault. Calm down, okay? Listen, Sanchez doesn't give up many home runs, like Gary said. He just walks a million guys. Like, that's just his problem. I mean, on an island, I definitely won't be playing Choi. I mean, like I said, he's never in my lineup to begin with. If you're stacking the Rays, I could see you're, definitely getting him in there. But, I mean, dude, nobody's agonizing over Choi. I mean, can we have some real picks here for the next time? Like, Choi, give me a break. Come on.
You need Nolan Arenado. What do you want from me, man?
I mean, that was terrible, too.
Julian, have you ever rostered him?
I may have once, but I think the bigger news here is that I've just confirmed with some sources that Choi is going to be playing on 2 broken legs tonight. So he is seriously injured heading into this slate.
Oh, my God, the Sweatometer.
No. I mean, look, he wasn't on my radar at all, and part of it is because of the other guys that we've been talking about. I'm just way more interested in other first basemen. There's 2 at Coors Field. One of them is Brandon Belt. There's, for 4,500, you can get Ian Desmond, who I don't think is hurt, and is in a really good spot in an opposite-hand matchup, batting 6th for Colorado. There are a lot of options. Matt Davidson, we were talking about the White Sox a lot yesterday. they let down. They have another good matchup against Jordan Zimmerman tonight. Davidson is 4,100. I just think kind of like the second base situation we talked about, there are more guys that I would rather pay for than look at Choi here, who, as Garion mentioned, isn't in that great of a spot. So, yes, I'm on the same page with him here.
Can we keep Julian in the studio? He's much more prepared when he's in the studio.
Dude,
I don't feel as prepared.
He was sitting like right next to us all day long, quiet as a church mouse, just dialed in, reading your cheat sheet all day.
Oh,
Yeah, as usual.
Alleged.
Not surprised.
This is all alleged.
He was writing his cheat sheet.
All right, toodaloo, professors. Until next time when Steve puts up his bukes, and we're talking NFL $1 Million Showdown contest in 50 seconds.
I am Brendan Glasheen with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Alvin Kamara, he's the Saints guy. We know that. Who's backing him up, or at least giving him a breather against the Buccaneers in Week 1? I don't know. How about Mike Gillislee? Possibly. Here's a team depth chart reported by Nick Underhill, who covers the Saints for the New Orleans Advocate. Underhill says not to take anything as gospel or as a certainty here, but Gillislee spotted as the number 2 running back. That's eye-popping. The former Bill and Patriot Gillislee, 3,400 for this Sunday. And the Saints might run up the score on the suspect Bucks early and often at the Superdome. So with that said, I'd say Gillislee has a shot to get some work in short yardage and goal line situations. There's value, but not a ton.
Alrighty, time to turn our attention to Thursday night's NFL opener between the Falcons and the Eagles, which brings with it our DraftKings $1 Million Showdown contest.
And here to help us sort it all out is once again Rich Rebar of Roto World and the fantasy girl herself, Rosalie Michaels. So guys, it's a captain showdown contest, meaning you pick a captain at 1.5 times his normal salary, but he'll also score you 1.5 times the points.
Oh, great.
Still working with the normal $50,000 salary cap, so who's worth spending the extra dough on, Rosalie?
Now, I know that most of it is going to be Julio Jones. There's going to be a huge amount of Julio Jones in this, but I decided to go a little bit contrarian, and I'm going Devontae Freeman here. The Eagles downgraded in the defensive tackle position, and they've also lost their best linebacker for a game. Now, in the 2017 playoff game, Freeman still managed to do 14.3 points while he was hurt. So I'm seeing a lot of Devontae Freeman scoring and a lot of Devontae Freeman running. So I'm going Devontae Freeman here.
All right, what about you? Who are you going to captain on your roster?
I'm still Googling who Jaiman Choi is. I'm still trying to figure out.
Oh, yeah. We are too. We are too,
Don't worry.
actually.
You're not alone. The only one who knows who he is, that would be Gary.
Yeah,
That's
Garion's
favorite player.
But I mean, yeah. So in a big tournament like this, obviously probably the highest ownership you're going to have here is going to be Julio in that spot. So you're going to have to go against the grain a little bit, especially when you look at what Julio has done. Jim Schwartz is both these teams have played in Philadelphia in each of the past 2 years, and Jim Schwartz has been content to just let Julio have a bunch of catches and yards. He's had 16 targets in each of those games, 9 for 101, 10 for 135 in those games. A lot of people are going to be chasing those. You're going to have to hit on a guy like Rosalie mentioned, a Devontae Freeman, where he finds the end zone. I also like Jay Ajayi, too, in that spot if you're going to gamble. He's a guy that had 19 touches when these two teams played last year. The Atlanta Falcons have allowed the most PPR receiving points to running backs in 3 consecutive seasons, the most receptions to the position as well over those 3 years. Ajayi caught 5 passes in that game. He'll probably have his best receiving game of the season, week 1, right out of the gates in this game. So I mean, if he can fall into the end zone for you, you have a chance to hit that 1.5 bonus, because there's probably not going to be a lot of points altogether in this game for a lot of people to latch onto.
All right, well, your captain pick is clearly the guy you think is a lock, but who's a good mid-tier play from this game? Rosalie?
I really like Mike Wallace here. He looks really solid. Alshon's out, and Al Hollins isn't going to play either. Aguilar is banged up, and so I think the Eagles are going to turn to Mike Wallace as their field stretcher in this first week. He's the number 2 wide receiver, and I have a feeling he's going to get a good amount of bubble passes and some opportunities for those deep touchdowns. So I like Mike Wallace as that mid-tier guy.
What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I probably like Aguilar a little more. I mean, he is healthy. He's practiced in full. If you look at his matchup individually, it's just a lot more solid than the guys in the boundary going against Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford. Brian Poole allowed the highest catch rate for all slot corners in the NFL last season. And in the slot is where Aguilar scored 95% of his points last year. So, I mean, he was second in targets with Nick Foles under center last year behind Zach Ertz. He's probably going to walk into a bump in target volume with Alshon Jeffrey on the sideline. So, I mean, I'm looking at him, and then real cheap, edging off of what I said about Jay Ajayi, a guy like Corey Clement is probably in play too as well.
Okay. What about your value pick, Rich? Who would you go with?
Yeah, I would say I'd be looking at a guy like Clement. I think he's 3K. Definitely want to look at you got to need a cheap guy in this to pop, to hit for you, to bump you up, because ownership is going to be all over the board. All these guys are going to be owned. And when I mentioned Atlanta's receiving splits out of the backfield, what they allowed the running backs, and Clement's also a guy, he out-touched Jay Ajayi inside the 10-yard line when Ajayi joined the Eagles last year. I don't expect that to happen full season-wise, but you might have some bonus upside for a touchdown if Clement is in the game.
Rosalie, no, we need Rosalie's value pick.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
My
nice
bad.
try, buddy.
I jumped the gun.
Rosalie, I did not forget you. Who is your value pick for this game? I got you.
That's my girl. So I agree, though, with Rich. I went Corey Clement, too, as my value pick. Like Rich said earlier, is that Atlanta isn't good against the pass-catching backs. And Ajayi, I'm not sure about. I think that Corey Clement's going to get those sneaky little touchdowns. Coach is up on him, and I like that. When a coach is high on a player, so am I. He's good in the receiving game. It's going to be low ownership for him, and he could get 15, 20 points on the upside. So I like Corey Clement as the value.
Thank you for that, Rosalie.
That, yeah.
I will never forgive you or forget you ever again.
You'll skip her and you'll never forgive her?
No,
Jeez.
never. Strike one, Rosalie. All right, well, thanks, squad. Hang tight for PGA Tears of Joy with Reed and Jeff.
Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Dolphins receiver Devontae Parker won't play Sunday in Miami's opener against the Titans. That's according to Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. Parker nursing a broken finger, an injury that occurred 3.5 weeks ago. The potential absence of him could spark target volume for starters Kenny Stills, who is 4,700, and new addition Danny Amendola, 4,200. That's for week 1 against the Titans. Stills is the outside home run threat. He's going to draw a lot of attention with mysteries opposite of him in Albert Wilson or Jakeem Grant. With that said, here's why there's more upside for Amendola. Number 1, reports from Miami say he and Ryan Tannehill have developed great chemistry this preseason. Amendola also takes the place of Jarvis Landry, who was a target machine in his first 4 years in the NFL with the Fins. And since this is Tannehill's first game since 2016, remember, injury, missed all of last year, he's going to look his way to ease back into this thing. Plenty of short to intermediate throws, close to the line of scrimmage. That is where Amendola will be.
Only 2 more weeks left in the PGA Tour season, second to last stop in the hunt for the FedEx Cup. It's the BMW Championship, ladies and gentlemen.
So let's bring in our handsome duo of Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich to help us play some Tears of Joy. Who do you like and why in the following tiers? 4 guys over $10,500. Dustin Johnson, Justin Rose, Justin Thomas, and Brooks Koepka. Reed, who are you taking?
Yeah, I'm going to go with JT, Justin Thomas here. He's kind of in the position that where we saw him at Bridgestone, where he was, again, not the similar price at 8,800. Obviously priced a little bit higher, but I do like him here. He's coming in at probably around 10% ownership. And when you get an elite guy of his caliber, the winner, defending champion of the FedEx Cup playoffs, like he's going to do well. And if I can get him at that ownership, like over the last 24 rounds, this guy's first in stroke gain approach. That's what you're going to need at this Donald Ross course. It's a lot of hitting in the right spots off the tee and coming in to these big greens in the right angle. So give me Justin Thomas, especially if Brooks and or Rose are projected coming around 15 to 20% ownership.
Jeff, what about you? Who are you paying up for?
Reed's a closet Justin Timberlake fan. I just found that out. And let the entire world know. I couldn't pay up for any of these guys when Brooks Koepka is 10,500, quite frankly. Third in strokes gained tee to green last week. He was really solid tee to green. It's just his putter. He just needs to get his putter going, and he's a really good putter. He's got positive strokes, bent grass putting over all other surfaces over his career. This is a bent grass course. And look, the course is also projected to play wet. There's going to be some rain in the forecast. Last time we saw a wet, long course, it was the PGA Championship where he absolutely destroyed everyone. So I really feel like Brooks is going to make a run at the FedEx Cup title. I love him this week. I mean, he's too cheap, in my opinion.
All right, boys. Well, how about Fowler, Rahm, Molinari, Scott, Fleetwood, and Cantley, all between 8,500, $9,000. Take your pick, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, this tier kind of boils down to you got the safer picks, in my opinion, with Cantley and Tommy Fleetwood, who've both been very consistent. But then you got some interesting GPP plays with Rahm and Adam Scott. I think some people are going to jump off Adam Scott here. I'm fine staying on him. He's got a lot of confidence with the putter. His tee to green game wasn't great last week, but you know, a couple top fives over his last 3 or 4 starts. Really good at the PGA. I think he bounces back here. He needs a big week for the FedEx Cup race too. And again, it just comes down to confidence. He is one of the most confident players on the greens right now with his putter. You can't say that very often about Adam Scott, but when you do, he generally plays really well for long stretches. So I'll take Adam Scott from this range.
Reed, who are you confident in with the 6 duo?
I'm not a closet Justin Timberlake fan. He is the best pop star outside of Michael Jackson. Let's get one thing straight. But I can't go with Fowler here, although it's a great last name. I got to go with Molinari here. He's talk about confidence. If not Brooks or if not DeChambeau, he's one of the best golfers that we've seen over the last month, right? I mean, he won the Open Championship. He's coming off of a week off, so that ownership might decrease a little bit. But talk about a guy who's playing fantastic. Over the last 24 rounds, just outside the top 30 in sand saves. There's a bunch of bunkers here. You know, he's top 20 in that par 4 range between 400 and 450 yards. There's about 7 to 8 holes in that range. So give me Francesco.
All right, time to bargain hunt around 7,500. Watson, Stenson, Stanley, and Oosthuizen. So who's bringing the value, Reed?
I really want to pick Stenson here, but he's just been absolutely atrocious, losing like 4,000 strokes putting over the last like 6 tournaments. So it's going to be Bubba Watson for me. Again, if you look at the Donald Ross splits, Henrik does come out pretty high, but I like Bubba's contrarian play just a little bit. I think that ownership is going to be around 10 to 12%. But if you look at the playoffs so far, it's elite guys doing well. That sounds simple, but take the guys, especially in these ranges, and now when the field is getting smaller, that can really have win equity. Yeah, all these guys are playing extremely well because they're in the top 70 in FedEx Cup standings. But Bubba has won 3 times this season. Stenson is someone, yes, he's on the Ryder Cup, but he hasn't been playing that well. So give me Bubba here.
Jeff, who's your value pick?
Yeah, it just comes down to sort of a talent issue here. I mean, if Stenson was healthy, I'd be all over him, but he's not, and he hasn't been playing well. So I think you got to go with Bubba. First in strokes gained off the tee last week. I will say this, if you're looking for a bit of a fancy swerve play here, and you just don't like to roster Bubba like me sometimes, I think Louis Oosthuizen is fine. He looks healthy. Oh. Shut up, Reed.
Shut it, Reed.
It's not your time to talk,
25s. He's been trending towards a big finish all year. It could easily come this week. He's more of a GPP play. He's got a ton of risk, but he'll be way lower owned. So give me Bubba as the one pick, but I think Louis is a fine GPP play.
I thought Canadians are supposed to be nice. Wow.
Yeah, you know, Jeff's got an edge to him, bud.
Yeah.
You know that. Well, before you two take off, bring it on down to Veganville. How about some slate-approved picks? Your lock of the tournament. Jeff, you go first because I want Reed to interrupt you.
Okay. Brooks Koepka, again. I mean, I already went over it. I don't have to say much more, but I really like Brooks this week.
No, you don't. He is the strongest human being on the PGA Tour.
Oh,
Reed.
in the world, actually.
Actually, no, you're right. You're right. Sorry about that. Reed?
It's going to be Francesco Molinari.
Oh. Yeah, he's
Oh, shut up, Jeff.
Wow. Back
I love
and
this.
forth.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, wow.
You're so
Wow.
soft, Reed.
Oh, you're sorry, Reed? You're sorry?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
You're sorry.
All right, guys. It was good seeing both of you.
Yeah, thanks for all that you guys do for the sweat. One more block of baseball. Yeah. Okay, bye. One more block of baseball to go. And Steve is ready to fight both Julian and Garion.
Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. What the heck is going on with the Seattle Mariners? Outfielder D. Gordon and shortstop Gene Segura fought in the locker room before Tuesday's game against the Orioles. So after bodies flailed and blood boiled, the M's went on to lose at home 5-3. With a full 24 hours to blow some steam, how do the Mariners come out and play tonight? Their lineup faces Andrew Kashner, who owns the 8th worst ERA in the majors, 4.86. I'd only say to take flyers on guys who stayed out of the initial commotion. That's veterans Robinson Cano, who is still trying to get himself going after the 80-game suspension. You got Nelson Cruz, who has 33 home runs. Altogether, you might just want to fade Seattle the rest of the way. I mean, the regular season. 5.5 games back of the A's for the second wildcard spot. Just 23 games left. Things aren't so pretty anymore at Safeco Field.
All right. No.
Okay,
All right,
I'm
DK
so sorry.
News alerts. Not good news for Shohei Ohtani, who is in the lineup tonight for the Angels, but as you know, he missed the long window from pitching. Had an MRI today. Turns out that he has new UCL damage in his throwing arms. He's being recommended by the team to undergo Tommy John surgery. So let's bring in Julian, let's bring in Steve and Garion. Want to get your reaction to this, guys. Steve, what's the fantasy impact here? Because again, it seems like he's still going to be behind the plate for now. He has not decided if he's going to undergo Tommy John surgery yet.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised Garion didn't pick up on this a couple months ago. There was a misboat with that one.
Dr. Buchanan, everyone. Dr. Buchanan.
Took the words out of my mouth right there.
For more than a month, so and it's.
But anyways, I mean, this is just—it's absolutely crazy that this is still going on. I mean, just get the kid healthy, get him in the surgery, just get the Tommy John done and over with. The fact that they're still throwing him out there, the fact that he was on the mound pitching the other day is just absolutely ridiculous. Get the kid healthy. This is your long-term future. Just get him out of there.
Yeah, he lasted only 2 1/3 innings the other day. Garion, you see this come across the wire, and like fantasy-wise, what crosses your mind?
I mean, it's awful news for redraft situations. I think going into next season, he was probably going to still have more value as a pitcher than he could ever have as a hitter, despite the fact he has shown a relatively solid bat so far this season. But yeah, I mean, really, the Angels are lucky the Mets have been just such an atrocity when it comes to handling injuries the last couple of years, because the Angels are right there. Like, every single pitcher on that roster has basically been on and off the DL like a revolving door. So this wasn't really shocking because, like Steve said, there was no good reason for him to be pitching in August of a lost season. So I don't quite understand what they're doing there.
Yeah, Julian, if he goes under the knife as expected, he's going to miss all of 2019, likely some of 2020. You look at this, I mean, like if you're, someone at home playing fantasy, like, peace out, man. You're not going to see this guy for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with these guys on this. I feel like we knew this like a few months ago, though. So, like, why didn't he
it's
just
like
have
the Angels
surgery?
have just been toying with us.
Yeah, it's just kind of, I guess if there's any fantasy upside here, it's that we get Ohtani's bat for the rest of this season. That's really the only way to look at it. And then once we get to 2019, obviously he's lost as a pitcher and a bat, and then potentially for some of 2020. So I don't know what the Angels are doing from their perspective in terms of real baseball, but really the only thing we can say fantasy-wise here is that we get Ohtani's lefty bat for the rest of the season, and then, we'll see him a couple years down the road when it comes to pitching and hitting again.
All right, well, we'll see about that after Garion has time to check him out and give his medical opinion. But it's not time for the checkup right now. It is time for Fight Club.
Let's put up your bukes, everybody.
Yeah.
Steve describes it as the highest rated segment on the show. I agree.
Yeah.
Although we haven't had hidden jewels in quite some time.
It's been a while, guys.
That's fine.
I think there's a reason for that, Julian. Steve, give us your 3 picks and DK point projections, and then we're going to open up the floor for Julian and Garion to hit you back with that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mike Leake for 18 DK fantasy points. Look, I'm not excited for this at all. I mean, I'm covering my eyes during the whole start. I might have a bottle of Jack next to me while I watch it, or probably actually not watch it. But look, it's at Safeco Field. It's against the Orioles. I mean, come on now. Look, Leake doesn't have much strikeout upside, just the 5.7 K9. But to reach 18 DK fantasy points, he just needs 5 decent innings, a couple strikeouts, and a win, and he can honestly obtain that score tonight. The Orioles are averaging just 3.6 runs over the past 2 weeks. For an SP2 at 6,200, I don't feel like this is the worst play that you could have on the night. Granted, it's probably not going to be pretty, but if you're looking to save some salary and get a decent total, I think Lee could actually do it against his Orioles club.
Garion, you looked at Steve like he was insane for this pick.
It makes sense on paper in the fact that the Orioles are the opposition. I understand that. The win expectancy is high at home. But you look at his past 10 games, he's only been able to get to 18 DKFP once in that span. And we're talking about a string of starts where he has pitched into the sixth. He threw 8 innings in one of these starts. Like, his strikeout rate is so exceedingly low, it just caps his ability to score points. The only pitcher in baseball who's qualified and thrown enough innings with a lower strikeout rate is Bartolo Colon. So I guess the optimist in me would say at least Mike Leake doesn't have the lowest strikeout rate on tonight's slate either. But I just don't know if he's going to get there. I think if you are playing Leake, it's a cash game specifically. But even then, I could see this being 13 or 14 points, but he's definitely going to need to win this game to get to 18.
How you feel about Mike Leake there, Julian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually with Steve here, but if he's going to bash on Gary and I'm going to bash on him, this just doesn't seem like that hard of a pick. This is the clear-cut value pitcher on this slate. At 6,200, he's come down from 7,500 since 2 starts ago because he got blown up by the A's. I don't care about one start where he got blown up by the A's. He's surpassed 18 DK points 10 times this year, one of them against the Orioles. So taking a pitcher at 6,200 against an Orioles team that's projected for 3.2 runs in Seattle, it just doesn't seem like that crazy of a thing. He should, as Gary said, he needs the win here. He's going to get the win against the Orioles and get right about 18 DK points as he's done 10 times this season.
All right, Steve, please make it interesting with your second pick.
You know, when you have good picks, what can I say? You know what I mean? We're going to go with Ryan Braun for 16 DK fantasy points. I was actually pretty surprised about his power numbers against left-handed pitching. 248 isolated power with a 52% hard hit rate against them. He's got a great spot in the lineup, and he only is going to run you for $4,100 tonight. Look, the Brewers have a 4.7 run projection for tonight, which ranks amongst the highest across the league tonight. I mean, why wouldn't you want somebody who's batting cleanup tonight with a high run total, and it's only going to cost you $4,100? Look, Braun is not the guy he used to be, but I'll absolutely take the savings tonight in a prime batting spot in this matchup.
Julian, you taking the savings with Ryan Braun, $4,100. Steve's thinking 16 DK fantasy points.
I'm not taking the savings here. I get the appeal. Jose Quintana's given up 17 of his 20 home runs to right-handed bats. Ryan Braun has homered twice in his career off of Jose Quintana, but I do not want to pay $4,100 here. I just think there's better value whether you're going first base. We talked a lot in Gary's segment about the first base plays that I like, or you're going in the outfield here. I would rather pay up in other places. Do I like the play? Yes, it certainly makes sense on paper. I can see why Steve is picking this guy, but the question's over under 16 DK points. I'm going under here.
Gary, and how appealing is Ryan Braun to you?
I think he's pretty appealing. I mean, Braun, for the entirety of his career, has crushed left-handed pitching. I don't think that's surprising to put Braun into a lineup tonight. He's got a 4.12 WOBA off lefties since the beginning of August, so the bat has been hot in this matchup as well. Miller Park's a fantastic hitting environment. It's one of ESPN Park Factor's best home run parks for the season. There's really just a lot to like here, and I love the fact that you can get a little versatile with Braun in your lineups. There's no one necessarily blocking him because you do have to start 3 outfielders at the very least. So if you're paying up for like an Anthony Rizzo, or if you're paying up for Trevor Story, you're going to need to have a couple of these lower mid-tier value guys. And Braun is someone who brings that with an exceedingly high ceiling, and that's kind of the combination you're looking for.
All right, Steve, unfortunately, we have to cut you a little short here.
Oh, Steve,
because
sorry.
we need your slate-approved picks. So, Steve, I'm going to let you go first. Who's your lock of the night?
Well, I'm going to go with the guy I got gypped on. It's going to be Cole Calhoun.
There you go. And now we get your Buke as well. Gary, and how about you? Who's your slate-approved pick?
I really just like Tyler Glasnow against the Jays. I think the strikeout upside on a slate like this is hard to ignore.
And Julian, who are you going with?
Play Nolan Arenado with all his broken knees and shoulders.
Broken knees and shoulders. All right, thanks, guys. We're going to talk to you tomorrow. We appreciate the time and the hot takes as always. All right,
thanks.
So Emerson, did you learn anything today?
Yeah, I learned Le'Veon Bell's willing to say toodaloo to about like $8 million if he doesn't show up until week 10. I also learned that Julian looks very good with natural lighting. He actually has good skin. Met him in person for the first time today. Great hair.
Wow.
Great face, everything. He's a good guy.
I learned that Garian might be a doctor. We're not sure. So, Dr. Garian.
Yeah.
Thorn in my side. He'll medically remove it. But this has been The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia, and we will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. So see you then.